So I guess for me, having a couple of shops and seeing thousands of smokers change their habits from smoking into vaping, and then come back and report how much it's changed their life for the better, how they feel better about themselves, how they can breathe more easily and freely, how their wife will kiss them now, how they just feel more healthy, they save themselves money, and so on and so on. The thing which is a resounding message from all of them is every single one of them has different requirements. So whether that be requirements on their devices, or the requirements on the tanks, or the requirements on the liquids, or the nicotine strength, there are a massive amount of variables within each of these different categories. And like with food or with drink, you get everyone has their specific needs and requirements. You want different foods, you want different drinks, depending on who you are, what mood you're in, what day of the week it is. And it's the same thing with the devices and with the liquids. It needs, I think you need that massive amount of choice to suit each specific vapor's needs and requirements, and to allow them to have the best opportunity to give up smoking, really. And then on top of that, I think the trouble I think we're going to suffer is by reducing the amount of liquids on offer, and by reducing maybe the devices as well. That's going to stamp out that side of things, and people aren't going to have the choice, and then maybe go back to smoking. I mean, we in my company, we police what we do very, very cautiously. We only import liquids from the US, which have gone through the relevant MSDS and GCMS testing. We get liquids made in the UK as well. And we just make sure that everything's done in a clean room environment, in a lab facility, dust-free, and all the rest of it, everything else which is needed to be done to make sure it's the best quality liquid possible. And I think by constricting these liquids, the availability of these liquids, by putting all these regimented things on top of it, is going to reduce that, and then people are going to go back to smoking, unfortunately. In the same way with the bottle size as well. I think reducing the bottle size. People still need the same amount of liquid, so it's just going to contribute to having more wastage, so more bottles being consumed, and it's an environmental issue, I guess. But I guess having a light touch would be the ideal thing, and allow people to have the responsibility, help and guide them to have the responsibility to do and supply the right products without sort of making it as stern as it is going to be, I think. But yeah, those are my views. So
you just sell e-cigarettes, you don't sell tobacco products at all?
No, we don't take any devices or products from tobacco companies or cigarettes either.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you for
it's just vaping stuff.
Okay, so the other Andy.
Okay, I'm going to be a bit more blunt than that, I'm afraid. I've been described as one of the millions of anecdotes, shills, all sorts of stuff, but at the end of the day, this thing saves my life. This TPD is going to kill people. There is no other way to say it. People will die. It will take away this life belt and replace it with this piece of garbage at the end of the day. It is going to kill people. It really has to stop. Don't do this. Don't take these away from me, please. It's going to kill this generation, and it's going to kill the next generation. It'll turn me into a criminal overnight, because I will have to turn to the newly created black market to get this, which will save my life. And that black market is going to be massive. Many more who can't find the black market will have no choice but to go back to smoking, because this is not an effective replacement for smoking. There's no point in making these things safe if you're going to make them totally ineffective. What is the point? Please don't do this. Don't take this away from me. Finally, why are we, the guys that actually use these things, only being properly consulted now? Why? Throughout the whole process that brought about this legislation, which will kill people, are we only being spoken about now, once it's all done and dusted? That's all I have to say.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So I'd now like to open this up to the floor. Particularly keen to hear from other vapers for your thoughts. And so do raise your hands high so we can see them. And perhaps when we're talking in this session, let's bear in mind some of the thoughts from this morning where people were saying, you know, it would be nice to have regulations which will help to minimise the risks of the products and reassure consumers. So it's that balance and getting that balance right. So welcome any views. So who's got the mic? And again, please name and where you're from, even if you spoke earlier. Thank you.
Catherine Devlin from Isita, thank you. Thank you very much, panel. I just wanted to ask a quick question, Beryl, if you wouldn't mind awfully. It appeared in your presentation, for which many thanks, and I share Clive's view that, you know, we recognise this is not your fault, it's not your doing, you have been lumbered with this. But you seemed to indicate that you would not be requiring pharmacokinetic studies to demonstrate consistency of delivery. Are you able to confirm to us that it will be acceptable to be measuring nicotine delivery to vapour and assuming that all of that is uptaken?
I can't really give you a categorical answer. That is my understanding of the way we're going, yes. But guidance is going to come out later.
Unfortunately, I want to add to what Alan said, that not only the vapers were not asked, but even the scientists were not asked, were not consulted during this process. So what we are trying to do is try to influence the regulation through other methods, one of which is that we have submitted a paper which is currently under review, which makes a proposal of a protocol to assess nicotine consistency without, of course, measuring plasma nicotine levels, but a simple, I think, cost-effective and very practical way of measuring nicotine with various sessions of vapor aerosol isolation, rather than doing clinical studies, which, of course, is impossible to do with all these products. So I hope this will be a guidance that may be used by the MHRA or the EU to propose a similar or the same protocol.
Okay, so I saw some hands up at the back. Who's got the microphone now, please?
Hi there, Andrew Manson from British American Tobacco. Clive, you made a very characteristic, robust attack on the TPD, but also it's clear that if the category is totally unregulated, then cowboy manufacture can also destroy the growth of e-cigarettes. What would the panel consider sensible regulation that will allow the growth of the category without bad products creeping in?
Yeah, I mean, the people who, you know, and there's many of us who don't like the use of medicine regulation or the Tobacco Products Directive or the thing that's being crafted in the FDA, are generally not against regulation. This is one of the fallacies that circulates. I'm for proportionate regulation, really. So I think we've gone about this in a really bad way. I've been looking recently at what regulatory approach should you take to innovative, disruptive new technologies? And you do almost exactly the opposite of what we've done. So you go in gradually. You do it in a way that allows things to change over time as more becomes known. So what I would do, what I think we should have done, is that we should have done a few sensible things when these products came on the market. Should have required, and consumer protection legislation could probably have been used to do this, required pharma-grade ingredients and food-grade flavours, done something about electrical safety so we don't get these people getting their teeth blown out, whatever the mail said happened, require, you know, tamper-resistant packaging and so on, put some sort of sensible information on the package, require the products to be as described. Again, that's consumer protection legislation. So if it says it's 18 milligrams per milliliter, then that's what it should be. And there's a whole series of sensible things that we could have done much earlier that would have provided some assurance sooner, instead of going down the sort of grand scheme idea, which was either medicine regulation or this sort of thing that was done in the EU. On advertising and marketing, I think the controls that were developed by The commission advertising process, absolutely excellent, seems to be working well. I would say that's a sort of triumph for British reasonableness. It's roughly equivalent to what's done in alcohol advertising, more or less, and who's arguing that alcohol is any less dangerous than these products? So I think if we'd seen the opportunities, not the threats, we'd have approached this very, very different. We're now locked into something that's extremely... standards, that's the other thing. So we're now starting to see standards emerging via BSI, via CEN, and via ISO. And having a standard, so just comply with this, is much better than having all this sort of notification and lots of testing and so on. So I think there are things that we could have done that would have been a reasonable way, would have got the rogues off the market, other than the tobacco companies, got the rogues off the market, the dodgy products off the market, and we'd have been in a much better place going forward.
Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions and then I'll come back to the panel. So here.
Hi, Peter Beckett from Nerudia. I just have a couple of questions on the detail of the regulation. There was a discussion on the advertising, and I noted in one of Alette's slides that it said that you wouldn't be able to advertise or promote on a website, but that you would be able to provide factual information. I just wonder whether or not there's any guidance as to where the line is drawn between advertising and factual information. I also noticed on another slide there was something about the 2 ml tank restriction. I just wonder, and the statutory instrument seems to imply that only applies to single-use tanks. Could you just confirm what the current thinking is on that? Thank you.
Can anybody address either of those questions? Oh, yeah, great, thank you.
Oh, hold on, Alette.
Come up and have a mic.
I can confirm that the 2 ml will apply to tanks. That will be clarified in the final draft of the regulations. It is right, and it has been pointed out to us, that our regulations can be read in two ways. It needs to read that tanks can be no larger than 2 ml. Sorry, refresh my memory on the advertising one. Where's the line? This is something clearly we're trying to come up with a framework which is going to work. And I think that we're not the first area where we have tried to work out what does promotional look like. And that's something we're going to be working with the ASA and CAP and BCAP on. And hopefully we'll come up with something that fits the bill.
Can I ask you what you were hoping to achieve by having this 2 ml limitation? What's the idea behind that?
Again, it's not Alette who's trying to...
It's not me, for a start. Yeah. Unfortunately, no, I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, can I make a comment? First of all, I want to reassure Alan, who is a Vaper, that his products are going to remain on the market. The regulators are going to be completely embarrassed by the easiness by which the 2 ml limit is going to be bypassed. On the next day of the regulation, you will going to see devices which will be presented as 2 milliliters, and they can get up to 5 inside very easily, and they cannot do anything. It's very simple things that the manufacturers are going to do. But I agree with Clive. First of all, there is the need for regulation. The problem is right now that the market is very fragmented. Everyone can wake up one day and start becoming an unequal manufacturer, and this is not a good thing. Regulation is needed. There are other ways, more practical, more financially sustainable, that could do that. But I don't think leaving the market at its current state is the ideal thing.
Okay, I want to take 3 more questions, so sorry, we'll come back to you. So I'll take these 3 questions together, and then I'll ask you all for final comments again. Sorry to do it this way, but it's the
This
only
is
way to
Dr.
get
Bua from Cyphil Limited, and my question is specific to Beryl Kelly. How the TPD2 intends to regulate e-cigarettes by so many different means, but how does it intend to prevent a grey market wherein consumers can just buy nicotine solution which would be available after post TPD2, and any flavor components which is readily available, food flavors are readily available in supermarkets. So how will TPD2 seek to prevent this type of market? And second is that Article 20 of TPD2 clearly states that nicotine dose and nicotine uptake needs to be measured. Now, without recruiting human beings, vapors or not, doesn't matter, how do you propose that manufacturers will get the data on nicotine uptake?
Okay, thank you. That was
Thank you.
2 questions. I'm going to ask you just for 1 question for the remaining 2 people with their arms up, please.
David Dawn, vaportrails.tv again. I think I speak for every vaper in the room when I say that the Tobacco Products Directive is probably the biggest disaster that could ever have happened to vaping in the UK and throughout Europe. I see nothing. I can see nothing in it that does any good at all, and I would agree with Clive that everything it does is completely wrong. This is a question for everybody that's got any influence anywhere with government at all. Why the hell are we not outside 10 Downing Street now and outside the Department of Health lobbying for Article 20 to be thrown out of the UK's implementation of the TPD? Why can't we do that? Why do we have to risk the great many lives that are going to be risked by the implementation of something that can do no good and will only do harm? And I should also say, I don't blame the civil servants that are having to do this. They're doing their job, but they've been given a job that they should never have been asked to do.
Okay, thank you. And I'll take the last question, and then I'll ask you just for a final comment. So the last question.
Tom Prune from CETA. My question is somewhat related to Dave's, although fortunately more brief. By our estimation, in taking into account the extra information we've gathered today, something like 90% of all currently available products will be removed from the market when the TPD is implemented. Does anyone on the panel think that's a good idea?
Okay, thank you. So can I ask you now for any final comments? If you want to answer the 3 questions or feel you can, fine. Beryl.
We will be bringing out some guidance as to how things are. I can't give you answers to everything at the moment. We are endeavouring to implement this in the most proportionate way that we can. I am a civil servant and that's my job. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
but we are doing our best.
Thank you, Clive.
I think we should be rigorous about watching for unintended consequences, watching for things going wrong, watching for big damage to a legitimate, law-abiding, health-promoting industry, replacing it with a black market of sort of, stuff from wherever. And I think if we start to see the signals emerging from the noise of unintended consequences arising, everybody involved in this across the EU is going to have to put their hands up and say we now need to bring that report forward from 2021, which is the latest date it can be done, but not the earliest, and we may need to think again. Unfortunately, Dave, the EU directive is law, and the government is required to obey the law, which it itself has, its hands are in the blood. It agreed to it in the Council. An elected legislature, the European Parliament, agreed to it. So it's all been passed as the law, and governments rightly do obey the law. And unless and until it's changed, there's nothing much they can do about it, other than rely on people like Alette to find the flexibilities and ambiguities in it and make it as least burdensome as possible. So a change of law is needed to do that. You can't just disregard it or not implement it. And that can come from a legal challenge, and there may be future legal challenges other than the totally wicked one, or it can come from a process. I think it's more likely to come from the process, but that just means that the officials involved and the people monitoring this have to be alive to things going wrong and be prepared to do something about it.
Robert?
Thank you. Yes, in terms of next steps, I would just reiterate what Alette said about having your emailing the email address that you had on your slide there to make sure you're on the mail out for their sharing of the draft regulations, and watch this space with regard to ASA and CAP announcements in the new year about advertising stuff going forward.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about this black market side of things, and it's not as sinister as it sounds, because the components that are needed to make e-liquid are all readily available in Boots, on Amazon. They're just very everyday benign products. So it's not going to help anything, because everyone can easily get hold of them and make these liquids up themselves, which is, I think, when the problem's going to start happening, as we've heard, is sort of potentially a problem. So I think, yeah, it's a very real reality that it's all going to be driven underground without without the ability for people to buy these bigger bottles of juice at the higher prices for the little bottles. But there we go.
Thank you. Andy, anything to add?
Very simple, one-liner. They're playing with 1 billion lives and they've got it wrong. Get it fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not so pessimistic. I don't think that the TPD is very bad considering the FDA. Dave, you have to take care that they might bring the FDA rule if you want to avoid the TPD. That's going to be a killer. I don't think that it's anything close to 90% removal of the products. Of course, instead of having 5,000 flavors, we may have 3,000, 2,000. That's not necessarily bad. Some other unintended adverse consequences could be, for example, the reduction in the availability of different nicotine concentrations. Because a problem of the TPD is that right now, even though the liquid may be the same, of the same flavor, and with just different nicotine content, they are considered different products. And you have to undergo the same process for that liquid. And that's one of the huge mistakes of the TPD. And I think the marketing and advertisement bans, not restrictions, they are bans. They are also not good. And another thing that is very worrying is the open window for future bans. So when a state, for example, Germany, with the German Cancer Institute, decides that a tank is not that good, they can create a whole mess within the EU, and that's an open window to ban products. I think these are the major challenges of the TPD.
Okay, thank you. So we're having to speculate a bit here because we don't know the impact of the EU TPD, and I have to re-emphasise that this is not a representative group of people, but please could you have a show of hands whether you think the TPD, in terms of the article on e-cigarettes, will benefit public health. So all those who think it will, show of hands, and all those who think it won't, a show of hands. Okay. Any abstainers on this one?
Me, myself.
Okay. I'm going to ask a follow-up question, actually, because I've got 30 seconds. What do you think that e-cigarettes need to be advertised in some shape or form?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And no, hands down, no. Ban advertising of e-cigarettes altogether.
You?
Any abstainers?